we chose Singapore to open our Asia office as the Singaporean workforce is well renowned for being well educated, good reputation for work ethics and low corruption. Good afternoon everyone. Thank you for tuning into this webinar hosted by Workforce Singapore, and thank you to Ideen for inviting me. My name is Peter Bagnall and I'm the Managing Director of Aero Inspection Asia Private Limited. A little bit about me, as you may have guessed from my accent, I'm not Singaporean, but I do feel I've been living here long enough to include a few las throughout my sentences. I'm from Ireland and I've been living in Singapore for the past 6 years. I moved here with my wife in 2014 to open the Singapore branch of our company. I work in aviation and have been doing so for the past 11 years. I have an undergraduate degree in material science and a master's in business management. For fun, I managed to join business and pleasure by flying light aircraft out of Johor Bahru, flying nice places like Tioman and Malacca. About our company, Aero Inspection Asia Private Limited is an SME aviation company which provides field service inspections on aircraft engines and engineering services for the design of modification on large commercial aircraft. We've been in business since 2004. From a HQ in Ireland, and in 2014 we opened our Singapore office to serve Southeast Asia and the China market. We have 28 employees across the company and 10 contracting staff. In our Asia office we have 10 full-time employees and 5 contracting staff. We've built this from one person in 2014. Our clients include Singapore Airlines, VietJet, Garuda, Tiger Air, Aer Lingus, Boeing, Peach. We work on A320s and 737s right up to the A380s and the Dreamliner. Today I'm here to talk about my own experiences with regards to the hiring process in Singapore and the challenges faced when hiring our key people. I'm also going to talk on 3 main points with regards to using independent third parties in our hiring process. I'm going to talk about why we use independent assessors, the value of a team profile over a candidate profile, and what and how independent assessors assess. Like many of you, we're an SME, and as an SME, we don't have a dedicated HR team. For hiring, we use our directors and line managers to write job descriptions, carry out interviews, and make the final decision on hiring. Over the years, we've employed approximately 60 people and taken on many contracting staff. This can be very challenging without a dedicated HR expert, so a few years ago, we decided to overhaul our HR process. We brought in independent assessors. We don't do this for every position that we have, but for the key positions. So first, let's look at why we do this. There are many pitfalls that we can fall into when hiring someone. There's a story about 3 blindfolded men who all come across an elephant. The first man reaches out and touches its trunk, the next man reaches out and touches its leg, and the third man reaches out and touches its tail. All 3 think that that's what an elephant is because they're too close and they didn't get the whole picture. So perspective changes everything. And without it, you're just a blindfolded person feeling up an elephant. We use independent assessors to get a larger, different perspective. Within our company, as I mentioned, we don't have HR experts. So while several of us have management or HR courses, as an SME, we're not hiring candidates day in and day out. After a review, it was clear that we weren't using enough metrics on hiring our potential candidates. We would assess the person mostly on their core competencies that we required, but only briefly address the soft skills that we required for the role. We found that using, again, independent assessors gives us a more balanced view of the candidate, which would allow us to build a more well-rounded team. Another pitfall I like to call the blinkered horse. You know the horses that are racing and they have the blinkers on the side so they can only look straight ahead. We can be often blinkered by the pressure to hire someone right now. There's a customer requirement or a looming project deadline. We may choose the right now candidate rather than the right candidate. This gives us a short-term solution for our impending problem, but by selecting a candidate who's not right, it creates a much larger problem down the line. An independent assessor who has no skin in the game and does not care about our deadlines, they can give us an honest review of what they feel and if they think the candidate is a suitable person for that position. The next pitfall I like to call the mirror. And what I mean by this is that the hiring manager sees traits which are similar to their own in candidates and brings them through the selection process, even if the person is not the most suitable candidate. We find that having an independent overview eliminates this pitfall completely and helps us again to select the right candidate. Another reason we use independent assessors is to avoid the cost of a mismatch hire. While we do have additional costs in our hiring process, we are avoiding the cost of, again, the mismatch hire. A few years ago, we carried out a review of staff turnover and the root causes behind this. We also did a review on how much it was costing us. So we had both tangible and intangible costs for any mismatch hire. Our tangible costs were time and money, outgoing wages, etc. on candidates that are not the right fit, and also, again, time. Time spent on the recruitment process, time spent on the internal and external training, time spent until the realization of the mismatch hire, and then time spent in the notice period, and finally time spent on the hiring your next candidate. So it's costly in both time and money. The other side is obviously the intangible cost to the company. There may be a slump in morale if one person's not pulling their weight, which can have a knock-on effect on productivity for our entire team. Or if the person is very customer-facing, there can be potential damage to our company reputation as they're representing us. So how we did our assessment was to walk through the process and see where there was room to improve. So our hiring process is in two phases. Phase one is to get the CVs in the door and to review them. Phase two is what we do after that. The steps in phase one are to define the role that needs to be filled, create a job description, choose our hiring pipeline, and get CVs in the door, and then finally review the CVs. To break this down, let's talk about the job description first. The job description is the foundation of our hiring process, so we take a lot of time with this. We don't copy and paste from previous jobs or from our competitors. We break it into two sections, hard skills and soft skills. The hard skills are very easy for us to assess as it relates very closely to the skills within the company, i.e. the candidate must have a degree in mechanical or aeronautical engineering, candidate must have 7 years experience working on specific engine types or using specific engine tooling. Again, quite easy for us to assess. The soft skills can be more challenging for us. We look for soft skills like leadership, work ethic, and how much a person will be compliant with regulations. These can be very difficult to assess with questions such as, are you a good leader? What makes you a good leader? How would you describe leadership? Tell me about a time when you've shown exemplary leadership. These can all be rehearsed for and trained for. So using an independent assessor who has a toolkit of psychometric testing can help us with our interview process and our job description at the drafting stage. So we feel it's critical to bring in the independent assessor at this point to help us draft our job descriptions. Our engineering jobs are quite niche, so we feel it's better to cast our net wide in the job description. We only expect approximately 20 to 25 applicants, and we don't want to miss out on a good candidate who might have made nearly all of the criteria but chose not to apply. So that's why we keep our niche JDs quite loose. For other positions that are not so niche and attract people from across industries, we make our job descriptions as restrictive as possible. We're currently hiring a technical sales manager, which we have over 100 applicants for. That's a huge amount of time that we have to go through in terms of reviewing CVs. So what we do here is we really make it very specific and very detailed in terms of what we're looking for to help restrict the applicants. So let's look at our hiring pipeline. We have two different hiring methods. One is through our own channels, word of mouth, our own website, or advertising on like JobStreet or Indeed. The other pipeline we use is recruitment agencies. Other jobs are, again, so niche. We prefer to cast our net as wide as possible. So we use both. We go independent and we use recruitment agencies. We don't give away control of the technical competencies part of our job interview phase because we want to be 100% sure that we are 100% confident with their core competencies. So we insist on retaining control over that. When we first opened our Singapore office, our pipeline was more like a straw. But as our network has grown, we've managed to open up our pipeline, which means we're thankfully less dependent on recruitment agencies. Let's now talk about CVs. CVs are very two-dimensional documents. Most we can garner basic information regarding the person's career history, which company they worked for, how long they were there, etc. The rest can be considered poetry. People elaborate on their functions within each company and what their duties were. I once had a friend who had a job filling cars at a petrol station. On his CV, he called himself a fuel injection technician. Sounds impressive, right? Or how about the Polytechnic student who spent a summer stacking shelves in cold storage and didn't break anything? He describes his job as in charge of a multi-billion-dollar MNC reducing waste to zero in a 3-month period. Fair play to these guys. However, as a company, we need to be sure that we are effectively navigating the poetry. With the CV, it may not even be the candidate who wrote the CV. It may be their spouse, their kids. They may have outsourced it to an agency. So we take the CVs with a very large pinch of salt. Richard Branson has a great quote. If someone offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure how to do it, say yes and learn how to do it later. That's great advice for the person. However, we need to be sure as companies that we're hiring the right person who knows how to do the job. And just by reading CVs is not the way to do it. I don't think it's necessary to bring in the opinion of the independent assessor at the CV review period. We choose to do that internally ourselves. So to summarize here, the things that we've changed in phase 1 to date is the inclusion of the independent assessor during our job description phase. We have changed up phase 2 quite a bit, and that's what we do after we get the CVs in the door. Initially, we used to select people for interview based on their CVs, bring people in for round 1 face-to-face interview that we selected. This was the basic stuff like how well do they know our company and assessing their soft skills. If the person passed that, then we bring them in for the phase 2. This is where we would assess their core competencies, which was usually, and still is, engineering in our company. If necessary, we'd bring them back for one more interview, then we'd do final selection, and then we'd make the job offer. After a review, we noted that it was very time consuming and we could be a lot more efficient. Each selected candidate was coming to the office for a minimum of 1 hour on the soft skills, many of whom would pass that and then go on to the technical interview, which they would not pass. So we redesigned the process to start with a phone call. Sounds simple, but it was effective. So we'd phone the potential candidates to know each other a little better and for them to understand the job function better. We found that discussing the requirements such as travel in more detail could give them a better understanding of the role. Some candidates at this point would choose to back out. Even though the travel requirements are mentioned in the job description and the advert, having a 20-minute phone call can really drive it home for them that these travel requirements are a hard fact. We changed the order of the hard skills and the soft skills interview. We decided that the core competencies should be given priority. This means that rather than ramping up with each interview getting harder, we now start with a detailed assessment of their core competencies. For engineers, this is their technical knowledge, be it in design engineering or aircraft engine knowledge. We then have our internal soft skills interview, where we interview for soft skills such as leadership and how well they'll fit in with the organization. Once we're satisfied with that, we then bring in our external independent assessors to do the independent review of the person's soft skills. This is an interview without any aero inspection employees in a neutral location, and it also comprises of a set of web-based tests that they have to do. The HR agency gives us a detailed report on the candidates that they have reviewed, and then we take all that information to make a more well-informed decision and then make a job offer. By switching the interview sequence around and starting with the phone interview, we save a lot of time and money. Also, by engaging an external independent assessor, we're able to get a different independent perspective on the candidate and again build a more well-informed decision. Now I'll discuss the value of a team profile versus a candidate profile. We work in a relatively small team, so it's very important that everyone is well matched and we can all work together cohesively. We start off by analysing our current team. We did this by engaging the independent assessors to come in and build a profile of our current staff. We're all given the same set of online tests that any new potential hire would be given. This allowed the assessors to create a report, and then we use that report to see if there are any gaps or weak points in our overall team and tailor our job description and recruitment process to match that. Not only are we recruiting to fill the position, we're also recruiting to cover our weak spots and create, again, a well-rounded team. That's why we found it so important to bring in the assessors during the JD drafting so they can assist and advise us then using their knowledge of our team on our weak spots and blind spots so they can fit our team together like a jigsaw. Again, recruiting not only for our hard skills but as well as the soft skills. So if we had too many very indecisive people in the team, or if we have too many outspoken people in the team, we can try and massage that to again build the well-rounded team. Within our organization, we use a democratic leadership style. This is where we work together as a group, taking the opinions of all the team members for the leadership team to then make decisions to drive the company forward. Research has shown that this leadership style has the highest staff satisfaction and the lowest staff turnover. During the hiring process, we need to be sure that suitable candidates will match this style of company culture, as opposed to authoritarian, where the person responds well to being told directly what to do and needs a large amount of instruction, or laissez-faire, where the person prefers to be left alone and to their own devices. Using an independent assessor allows us to get the most suitable candidate that matches our company. So, what do assessors assess? I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of what they assess, as that's not in my wheelhouse. What we do is we describe the set of traits that we want and we feel are important to the role, but can be difficult to assess during a standard interview process. An example of this is when we're hiring our lead design engineer for our Singapore office. Not only do our design engineers have to design modifications, but they must also draft written instructions on how to accomplish or install the modifications. These instructions will be read by many different people working in many different locations around the world, and English may not be their first language, so they have to be crystal clear. To assess this skill, the HR company came up with the simple test. Each potential candidate had to give written instructions in English on how to make a cup of tea. Seems simple, however, some responses started with boil the kettle. Taken literally, this means you fill up a pot of water, bring the water to a boil, and then insert the kettle into the water. The successful applicant gave very clear and specific instructions. Remove the lid from the kettle, fill with water not above the limit specified by the manufacturer, replace lid, turn on kettle using switch, see operator manual for further information on kettle switch. While it's very simple, we found that this was a very good test and a great way to analyse the person's written communication skills, and we got to spend a full day drinking tea. To summarise, we found that since we've made these changes, we've been able to build a more well-rounded team that works well together. Our hiring process has become a lot leaner and more efficient, and our staff turnover has reduced. Having a better understanding from an independent perspective enables us to make better choices. While there is a front-loaded cost that's associated with bringing in external agency, the cost of a mismatch hire is potentially avoided. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please post your comments below. Thanks for watching.
Trust you've enjoyed the presentation. Do check out the handouts and flyers here, download them, and don't forget to join the discussion by leaving us your comments and your questions, and our speakers will be getting back to you with the answers.